Hello and welcome to BloombergQuint. You're watching the fine print. Electrical vehicles at 12%, luxury vehicles and hybrids at 43%, and passenger cars at 28% with 3 categories of cess. That's the rate structure for automakers under the goods and services tax regime, which is now just over a month away. So today, joining me on the GST countdown is Maruti Suzuki's GST Preparedness is Chairman R.C. Bhargava. Mr. Bhargava, welcome to the show. In an interview with BloombergQuint earlier, you had criticized the 43% levy on hybrids. Would you want to hazard a guess as to the government's thinking on keeping hybrids at 43%?
Well, it's difficult to understand what the policy will be, but my personal guess is that this 43% happened without people actually quite understanding all the implications of this. And my belief is that the government will reconsider this rate and not adopt a tax rate which will virtually drive hybrid technology out of the Indian market.
Sir, since the rates have been announced, have you had a chance to engage with the government on this front? Because, keeping electrical vehicles at 12% and hybrid at 43%, like you said, would drive some of the players out of the market.
I think industry as a whole has engaged government in this business, and I'm sure individual companies must be doing that. But there's a much greater impact on government if requests of this kind are done by the industry as a whole, not individually.
Sure. Sir, in the event that, hybrids continue to be taxed at 43% once GST comes in, would you at Maruti Suzuki rethink your presence in that segment?
Well, ultimately the presence in any segment depends on whether the customers would buy a product at that price. And the assessment, at least presently, is that if there's a higher cost of a hybrid car, because hybrid car has the conventional engine plus the electric motor plus some other things, including a bigger battery. And on that, there's a 43% duty. The customers would not buy the product.
So in your previous media interviews, you've maintained that for GST to become successful, it needs an efficient enforcement machinery, and also that it will enable avoiding tax evasion. The way GST is now shaping up, do you think that these twin objectives are achievable?
I think all these objectives are very much achievable. And my biggest expectation out of GST is not so much in the ease of doing business and the ease of logistics and what we will save in logistics, but it is actually in the longer term benefits which will accrue to industry from much better compliance with the tax laws, which will lead to stronger balance sheets, which will lead to stronger internal resource generations and increase the ability of companies to expand, bring in new technology, buy better equipment, invest in better manpower and training, invest in better risk management and safety technology and all of that.
Could you break it down for me, sir? I mean, what sort of aspects of GST will nudge companies in this direction?
See, today a lot of companies, and this particularly applies to the smaller companies, do not maintain correct accounts. They don't want to get into the tax net because they feel that it's a very cumbersome process and there could be harassment. So the practice widely prevalent is of siphoning out through various means income which goes untaxed and which weakens the bottom line of the company, because then the profit of the company is very small. So the internal resource generation of the company becomes very small. And when the internal resource generation is very small, the ability of the banks to lend to that company is very, very limited, because banks don't want to lend to companies which have such weak balance sheets and therefore almost no capacity to repay the loans. And in the absence of funds, all these things that I talked about better technology, R&D, better manpower, strengthening of manpower, expansion of capacity. None of this becomes possible. How do you do it if you don't have the money?
Sure. Take me through, sir, what you are doing currently for GST preparedness at Maruti Suzuki. What are your conversations with your dealers, and how are you, if at all, changing your manufacturing and warehousing strategy?
See, for the last few months, we've taken upon ourselves the very definite responsibility of working with our vendors, particularly, to ensure that all the vendors, including the tier 2 vendors, are enabled to become tax compliant. Because if they are not GST and tax compliant, the benefits of GST in terms of set-offs will not be available. And if the set-offs are not available, it will increase our price. So it is also in our interest to ensure that all our suppliers at every stage are able to enable the set-offs which are available under the system to be given to them, and so that the price is not artificially increased beyond what it should be. And we've been working with these people, and we are very hopeful that our supply chain will be by and large compliant with the GST by July 1. Most of our dealers are already compliant, the one who sell the cars, because they are pretty big, their turnovers are pretty big, and they don't escape the tax net. We have been working and giving them incentives and encouragement over the last many years to make stronger balance sheets, and that will continue.
Sure. In your conversations with these vendors and dealers, sir, have they discussed with you any specific challenges in this migration exercise?
No, I think nobody on principle or in terms of implementing the law can possibly have any complaint with the GST system. Actually, it's a very good tax system, and I think it's very hard for somebody to come around and say, no, this system is very bad, we don't like it.
Okay, so technology-wise and ERP solutions-wise, have you sort of tied up with GSPs and ASPs as we speak?
No, I can't specifically tell you this. You'll have to talk to our supply chain people, because they're the ones working with their various vendors and with the dealers, the marketing people. But at the management level, including in the last conferences we had with vendors and dealers in earlier in May this month, actually, this was one of the major items of discussion, that people have to become compliant.
Sure. Okay, so one of the aspects about GST efficiencies is the e-way bills. Could you help me understand, is that concept very clear to manufacturers, dealers and vendors, and how will this e-way bill process really function for a manufacturing facility?
No, the manufacturer, in fact, this doesn't remain limited to Maruti.
Sure, of course.
All of industry, I think every OEM has to ensure that his entire supply chain, as well as his distribution network, is compliant. Because at all stages, any non-compliance means additional cost. And additional cost means loss of competitiveness. It's a very highly competitive market. So in this competitive market, I don't think any manufacturer can afford to lose competitiveness by not being compliant or not having people who are associated with the manufacturer in terms of being suppliers, distributors, wholesalers, CNF agents, whatever they are, not being compliant.
Sure, understood. So we have the GST Council's next meeting on June 3rd, and going forth there will be several others. From now till July 1st, could you elaborate for me some of the specific areas of concern where industry needs clarity?
As far as the auto industry is concerned, I think it's only this tax on the hybrid cars which is a matter of concern. Otherwise, we have no concerns.
And on transition stock, are the dealers and manufacturers clear what is going to happen?
That's it. I don't think they have any specific areas of concern at all.
All right, okay. And the credit which, the transition rules said will be available for stocks where the duty paying document is not available, that credit number seems fine with the industry?
No, if the credit is not available, somebody has to pay that cost, no? Because that amount of tax paid earlier is lost. Who will pay that?
Okay, because the number that the government put out was 40% deemed credit of CGST or SGST wherever the document is not there. So I'm just trying to get a sense if that number sort of addresses the earlier tax paid concerns.
So it increases cost, no?
Okay, so is that cost likely to be passed on?
But the other benefit which will happen out of this is to the state governments, because ultimately better tax compliance will mean higher revenues for the state governments. Today, the extent of evasion in the state government sales tax system, I think, is very, very large. That's the general impression which people carry, going by everybody's experience and going and buying products in the market and where you pay VAT or you don't pay VAT. And largely, no retailer wants to bill you and give you a VAT receipt. And therefore, that will change. I think it may take a little time to change. But if the retail business all starts paying GST and becomes compliant, just imagine the income of the state governments and what that will mean to the ability of state governments to build infrastructure and improve education and health and all of that.
Well, sir, thank you for joining BloombergQuint. Here's hoping for better tax compliance and specifically for the auto industry, a rethink on the tax rate for hybrids. Thank you for watching the fine print on BloombergQuint.
Thank you.